But I like to draw a contradiction here. It's funny that
Mhm.
you said you were terrible at maths, but you are good at design.
Yeah.
Be-
No, no, no. But how is that a connected thing?
Because, see, I also have been quite inclined towards design. Now, I don't know.
Hmm.
This is just me, my headspace. I am a dancer. I dance.
Okay.
I also have been a creative here and there in little bit of all of my pursuits. Because even Koi Nahi
Hmm.
Baat Batao, all the design stuff for that, I do it myself.
Oh, lovely.
So my understanding here is because I love maths. I was very good at maths and probably the subject that I can study till date, right?
Okay.
So maths has been a logic provider to me since the beginning, and a lot of my art form also derives itself from mathematics, measurements,
Hmm.
mensuration.
Hmm.
Currently, to give you context, I work in my family business. We have a calcium phosphate manufacturing unit.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, if it's a manufacturing unit, then if anyone is running a manufacturing unit as an audience, they will understand that a lot of measurements, mensuration goes in there, and it's probably like magic.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is why I thought of it as a contradiction. But
No,
do you
so
not see it this way?
I mean, I do understand where you're also coming from. I don't see it as an absolute contradiction, but I do understand that math does come into all of it because there is a lot of obviously behind our company as well. There is a lot of calculations that have to happen whether it is how much we price an object. So you
Right.
calculating all the cogs for everything, you figuring out what your margins are. So I think all of that obviously accounts for it. And I think a lot of math we also end up doing, I myself end up doing very subconsciously, but I
Mm-hmm.
think the active, when I say I'm bad at math, the active, I think the way math is also taught in India and the classic definition of how math and mathematical problems we solve, right? I think that is
Very
something I'm
dishwashing.
really terrible at. Yeah, so maybe that is where my POV also comes from. And but I do believe like on a adjacency, having studied science through all my life, I think that becomes a very important, and like people say, right, like in a very traditional sense, that it's very important for you to do science until you're 12th. Obviously not true for most people, but I think if you have the capacity to do it, I think it always becomes beneficial because everybody that I speak to and everybody that works with us, just having a general knowledge about materials, processes, and how things react, what is denser, what is less denser, what certain material properties are, that becomes very beneficial. So that
Right.
I think that part of very traditional education seeps into my day to day quite a lot more than math. I'm also shielded from a lot of math because Ayush, my co-founder, handles a lot of the actual math of the business. Because he comes from a business background and he's a second-time entrepreneur. So lucky enough that we can split a little bit of our responsibilities in that term. तो वहां पे मैं थोड़ा बच जाता हूँ, but yeah, like when it has to come to actual calculations to कि कितना, like कहाँ कहाँ पैसे जा रहे हैं, where our money is going, what we're making, what not, कितने deliveries हैं, what जो भी ये सब Excel sheet बनाना है सब, I really struggle with it still to date. Because मेरे को यार मैं numbers देख के घबरा जाता हूँ. That is
Right.
something
Right.
that happens, but yeah,
But that is what co-founders are for.
exactly.
So tell me something about Notice. Which was your first product? Was it Tetrapod?
No, so initially we made four products, and these were purely made out of constraints of what vendors we had. So the first
Okay.
product was a stop sign called the Can't Stop Won't Stop, and this is
Hmm.
made out of the actual reflective material of a stop sign that you see on the streets, and then screen printed with custom typography on top of that. Then we had our mirror spectacular, which is the traffic mirror that you see.
Hmm.
That was
Hmm.
also a part of the first collection. Then we had a tote bag that we had made because the tote bag's idea was quite simple because we wanted people to have like a gateway into the brand. And tote bags
Hmm.
become very simple investments for people to check quality. So that is why that was like a one apparel thing that we wanted to make. And then we had this thing called drip, which was melting edge is what we call it. Drip is what we had, which was
Uh,
very, very, very heavily inspired by this American studio called Blank Studio. We were also
okay.
quite young, and it is very close to plagiarism if you look at it now, because it's very similar in terms of design. Obviously, it's an original, like we've illustrated it ourselves, but the idea is very simply just drawn from what we saw. Now we have learned enough to not do anything close to that because we know ki obviously it is a really negative thing to pick something up. But those are the four things that we had come up with. And there was also a huge that was also a huge journey to actually refine all of these things. So when we had the first stop sign, we had just printed the uh, cover sheet with stickers and literally pasted them ourselves. And very fastly, we realized that that is not something that is scalable or that gives us quality. With the Mirror Spectacular, we had initially picked them off of manufacturers. So it was the polyurethane mirrors which you see on the street, but
Mm-hmm.
they are very low quality and they're made out of polyurethane because they're out in the open, right? And you can't have glass in the open because it'll break. So, but we realized that that is not the quality that we offer. So we had to go back to the drawing board to actually manufacture it in glass, which becomes a much longer process. So we get the glass made somewhere, we get the base made somewhere, we do the caulking, silicon caulking ourselves. So that became a much longer thing. Tote bag also we went through, I think, 3 to 4 iterations, different vendors, different lengths, different sizes, and even the melting edge, we it really broke our heads to get that shining mirror finish on the product. Because if you've dealt with a lot of any manufacturer in the country, material and respecting the material becomes very difficult here because they're working with a lot larger quantities. So somebody
Yeah.
like me, when I come in with a request to make 500 pieces, it's a very sidebar work. So they like, अरे यार ये एक side पे कर देते हैं तो भी तो a lot of things got a lot very scratched up in the process. To achieve a perfect mirror finish was a very long journey for us as well. So that was the first four products we came up with.